Welcome back to One on One, New York's longest running sports call-in show. I am Kurt Sippel, joined alongside Alex Diaz for an exclusive interview with Rebecca Lobo. She's an Olympic gold medalist, a UConn basketball and New York Liberty legend, and a Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame inductee. Rebecca is now a reporter and color commentator for ESPN's coverage of the WNBA. Rebecca, welcome to the show. And how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me.
Great, and we'll just jump right in. You were part of some really great UConn basketball teams. I mean, one of your teams went undefeated and you won the national championship. What was that like to be a part of those teams?
Well, Kurt, what's interesting about sort of my experience being at UConn is I was part of the first national championship team, which was back in 1995. And none of us had any idea what was to come. And so now it's sort of like the first of 12 or the first of this incredible dynasty that's grown in stores over the course of the last 30 years. But for us, we were just, a bunch of teammates who really enjoyed one another, who had won Big East championships, but had never been to a Final Four. At least my class and the players I played with hadn't. That had this magical run and had a chance to win a national championship right at a time when women's basketball was getting really popular. And so for us, it was just this incredible experience for our group. And now, 30 years later, when I look back and just think of, wow, it not only was that for us, but it was the first of what was to become, basically the greatest program in the history of the women's college game. And so see it through a very different lens now than I did when I was your age and a senior in college.
You talk about being a part of one of the greatest dynasties in all of women's college basketball. We have to talk about Gino Auriemma with that. Not many players get to be coached by him, but he's been super important, I think, to women's basketball and has helped shape many careers. How did playing for him shape you as both a player and a person?
Alex, he changed my life. That was one of the things that I said in my Hall of Fame induction speech back in 2017, is if I hadn't gone to UConn, my life would have been completely different. If I hadn't played for him, my life would have been completely different. And not just because winning the national championship, things changed for me personally, but just kind of how he taught me about what I can do and what I can become. And I was always a hard worker, but playing for him brought it to a whole different level of expectation for myself. And he's had that impact on people for, this is his 41st season at UConn that they're about to start. He and Chris Daly, his associate head coach, have been there the whole time. And he's had players, throughout that time frame. And all of them kind of say the same thing, is that he changed our lives in terms of what we believed we could be, not only as basketball players, but in all the other areas of our life as well. And he's been such an incredible influence on so many women. And you look at all the players who played for him and what they've gone on to do in their lives, whether it's Brianna Stewart or Sue Bird, Diana Taurasi, Tina Charles, Renee Montgomery, all these players who are having an impact, yes, on the basketball court in the WNBA, but also in a broader way, and the impact they're having, whether it's social justice initiatives or whatever it is. He kind of empowered all of his players. And I think they've continued to go on and just have a real impact, again, whether it's inside basketball or outside of it.
Well, you win the national championship in 1995, and then you go on in 1996 to win Olympic gold, and then you become a member of the inaugural season of the WNBA. What did it mean to do all of those things at once and kind of be thrusted into this whole entire new look of women's basketball?
Again, it's something that meant something very different then versus what it means to me now. Like at the time, I was just thinking, I am so fortunate to have this timing that I have. Because when I was a junior in college, I thought my path was going to be graduate from college, go overseas and play professionally because there wasn't anything here at the time in the US. And then maybe, save some money playing professionally in Europe somewhere, come back and go to law school. Like that was my grand plan for myself. And then I was just really fortunate that the Olympics happened in 1996 and I was able to be on that team. We trained for an entire year leading up to the Olympics. And then, holy cow, the WNBA is starting in 1997. And as that stuff is happening as well, all of a sudden there's more college basketball games on television. There are now WNBA games on television. So, when you look ahead, that then becomes my career. But none of that was in play at the time. So at the time, I'm a 21, 22, 23-year-old kid, just thrilled that I'm going to have a chance to play basketball and keep playing professional basketball here. But of course, down the road and in the age I am now, I look back and think how fortunate I was that all of these things happened when they happened, and that led to the path that my life has taken for the last 30 years that at the time I had no idea would sort of be this beautifully paved path that would be just let out for me.
I'm sure you had no idea then what it would be like to start this new league, but I'm sure there had to be pressures. How did you balance that? And what were some of the biggest challenges that you, maybe some of your teammates faced playing professionally in that very first WNBA era?
Well, the crazy thing, or one of the crazy things, Alex, is when the WNBA was announced, Cheryl Swoops, Lisa Leslie, and I were the ones who were kind of doing all of the marketing and the media and the appearances. And the reason for that is because we were the only three players signed to the league for a while. And so like October, November, December, on the heels of winning gold at the Olympics, the three of us are out at all different kind of events. In the new year, we're at NBA All-Star functions. And, because we're doing all these photo shoots and promotional shoots, because for a while we were the only players that were signed to the league. And then, everything starts in 1997. And there was a lot of pressure just because, we all of us grew up without a professional league, or, if a women's league had started, it hadn't lasted. We were kind of the faces of the league. So there was pressure to perform. But at the same time, it was a really fun and thrilling time, especially for me to be in New York, of all places, and getting a chance to go to all these different functions and events. And, I'm going to the Video Music Awards, or I'm going to movie premieres. And I'm like, this is really cool. This is something I never expected. But the good thing for us anyway is that it was the age before social media. So it's not like, we could look down at our phone and have somebody insulting us whenever they wanted to. I could just walk through Central Park and have somebody insult me there, but not in the palm of my hand. But so it was sort of in some ways a really charmed time for all of this to start for us. But also there certainly were some pressures, but the excitement, I think, trumped all of that.
Adding on, what do you think your generation, how did it change women's basketball? As well, how have you seen women's basketball keep changing as new generations continue to play?
Yes, certainly. The game has changed a lot over the course of the last 30 years. Next season will be the WNBA's 30th season. Just like the NBA has changed over the course of the last 30 years in terms of how the game is played, pace and space and people taking threes and all of those things. Like the X's and O's on the court have evolved. While at the same time, there were great players in those early days. There are great players now. There are more great players now than there were in those early days. And and obviously the way the women's game has exploded in popularity is much different even right now than it was 2 years ago. Kind of the Caitlin Clark effect on all of women's basketball, whether it's at the college level or the pro level, has been incredibly significant. But it's been a joy for me, even, the past few years, just to walk into Barclays Center and see, a sold out arena of multi generations coming to watch these women play, all different cultural backgrounds coming to cheer on these women. You guys have been at Liberty games. It's an event. It's a party. It's incredible. And I played at Madison Square Garden because that's where the Liberty played back in my era. And there was sort of that feeling in those days as well. But it's been really fun to watch how the league has grown and how it is in Barclays now, how it is in different arenas around the country, and just sort of the different level of new fan that we have that maybe we didn't have 5, 6, 7 years ago.
Going off of being able to experience all of these crowds in different places, once your playing career ended, you transitioned into broadcasting. What drew you to that? What was the preparation like, and what was some of the more challenging parts of transitioning to broadcast?
Well, what drew me to it is it allowed me to stay around the game And as I mentioned, like there weren't a lot of opportunities to cover women's basketball. Like when I was coming up through college, I would have been a communications major if I thought that was a real career path. I didn't think it was, and so I was actually a political science major, like expecting to go to law school at some point. But right after I got out of college, I had an opportunity to do some stuff in studio during the NCAA tournament for ESPN. And then right when I retired from the WNBA, I retired after the 2003 season. And the next year, 2004, that summer, I was asked about, the WNBA is looking, we're going to add a sideline reporter. Would you be interested in being a sideline reporter? And without having any training whatsoever, had no idea what I was doing. Fortunately, the first game I worked in that first summer that I worked on WNBA games as a sideline reporter, Doris Burke was our analyst. And she's one of the best sideline reporters of all time. And she kind of took me under her wing and said, all right, this is what you need to do. We're going to go to shoot-arounds, talk to some players, get some stories. During timeouts, you're going to listen to the huddles. If there's anything that's really good to add as we're talking coming out of break, when you've been in the huddle, you're going to do that. So it was sort of like learning on the fly for a while. And now it's incredible because there's a real career for a lot of people, a lot of women as well in women's basketball. Whether it's, high level college basketball, no matter what division it is, what conference it is, or in the WNBA, there's a lot of opportunities now for people to do this. And that simply wasn't the case, 30 years ago when I was kind of first starting.
As an ESPN color commentator, sometimes you're put into hard situations when having to be critical of players that you might have personal relationships with. How have you balanced that as being a commentator as well as being a representative of the players and having the personal relationships with them?
Kurt, it was a lot harder when I was right out of school because you don't ever kind of want to be critical of a friend of yours. So if it was somebody I played with, that was hard. I think where I am now is it's never personal. Never make anything personal. Like, if you want to say, and also there's ways to say things instead of saying like, that was a terrible shot. That was a boneheaded decision. You can say, they were probably looking for a better shot there, or I'm sure they would, if they had to make that decision again, it would be different. There's ways to use language that, aren't going to go right at somebody's soul and instead, talk about the play that happened and maybe not the person who was making it. But, you have to have an opinion. The good thing for me as an analyst, and not necessarily like I'm not a pontificator, is that like, and first of all, I get to and am thrilled that I still get to sit next to Fordham alum Ryan Ruocco for almost every game that I call. He is, in my opinion, the absolute best to do it. He is absolutely incredible. He never puts me in positions that are uncomfortable for me to talk about something. But also, I don't have to manufacture any opinions. Like as a basketball analyst calling games, and even when I'm in studio, and Ryan and I have talked about this a lot over the last couple of years, I just have to say what I see. I have to say what I see, and I don't have to be a talking head who is, making up opinions that I don't actually have or yelling at a screen. I just say what I see in a way that hopefully the audience can understand. And, I've kind of held true to those things. And I have to say this too, like I have 4 kids and 2 of them are in college, two of them are in high school. And as they got older, I became much more probably aware of the things I was saying too, especially calling college games, because I could see these athletes not only as like athletes, but wow, this person's the same age as my daughter is. And I need to be really careful with language and say things in a way that it wouldn't bother me if they were being said about my own kid.
Yeah, you've gotten to call countless women's basketball games. You probably literally couldn't count it. But what has been your favorite moment that you've gotten the opportunity to be on a broadcast for?
Gosh, there's a lot of them because especially in the WNBA, we've had the chance to call tons of great finals. The during the Lynx dynasty, 2015, 17, that era, there were some incredible games and series with the LA Sparks in particular. Last year, the New York Liberty's first championship, which was one of the most epic 5-game final series we've ever been a part of, 2 of them going into overtime. There's been a lot of great moments. One of the things that was cool for me this past college season is that, during UConn's reign of winning 4 national championships in a row when Breanna Stewart was there, I was part of the broadcast, but I was in studio. I was not an analyst on those games. And so this past year was the first time that I was the game analyst for a UConn national championship. I had been the game analyst for some of their games in the Final Four that they did not win. But it was neat for me to be sitting next to Ryan and for our voices to be part of a soundtrack of a UConn national championship, because that's something that I had never been a part of before.
Well, talking about the New York Liberty, this season they fell out of the playoffs in the first round after losing to the Phoenix Mercury, surprising a lot of fans. But what did you see from the Liberty this season that might have played a role in that downfall?
I think the biggest thing for the Liberty this year was all the injuries that they sustained. They start the season 9-0. They look like they're going to just kind of have an incredible run, and that destiny was going to have them and the Minnesota Lynx meeting in the finals. And then they started to deal with injuries. Jonquel Jones, Breanna Stewart, Sabrina Ionescu later in the season. And even in their third game against Phoenix, Leonie Fibish, cracks a rib in the first few minutes of the game. And she was going to be a huge part of that game in terms of her defensive assignment. So it just felt like they never really found their rhythm with one another. And then even when they added Emma Miesemann midway through the year, again, it felt like, well, the super team just got even more super. But they just never had the time, it didn't feel like, for things to gel. And the chemistry just never, after those first 9 games, felt like it was where it needed to be. And that's a huge piece of success in sports. I mean, you kind of saw that with Vegas and the chemistry that they clearly didn't have for the first half of the season, and then were able to get the second half because so many of their pieces had played together for years and they just needed to find it. But yeah, with the New York Liberty, it was a little bit surprising for them to have that exit. It was a tough first round matchup. So much about basketball is matchups. Like Phoenix was a good matchup for Vegas. Phoenix was not a good matchup for the New York Liberty. And so, I'm sure it was disappointing for a lot of those players and Coach Brondello and the fans. But truly, injuries played a very, very significant part in the Liberty's outcome this year.
I think the level of competition surrounding the W has gotten a lot bigger. I'm sure part of that plays into how the Liberty played as well. But how have you just seen that level of competition evolve in recent years? And do you think that played a big factor in these playoffs?
Yeah, I think so. I think what you saw over the course of the last couple of years was the change in how free agency plays a role and how good teams can be. So after the last CBA, and how things changed with how often or how many times a player could be cored, there was just more free agency movement. We saw that a couple of years ago when Courtney Vandersloot, Jonquel Jones, Breanna Stewart all signed with the New York Liberty. And then this offseason, you see what happens in Phoenix. They add Satu Sabali, they add Alyssa Thomas, and it gives you a chance to build something a little bit more quickly. And even with Vegas, they formed their super team sort of a couple of years ago when they added Chelsea Gray, and then the opportunity to get Jewel Lloyd while trading Kelsey Plum. It's had a significant impact on the WNBA. And that's one of the things that's super interesting to me, and I think to anybody who really follows the WNBA, is what this offseason is going to be. Because anybody who's not on a rookie contract, minus Kalani Brown and Lexi Brown, is a free agent this year. We've never seen an off-season free agency like we're going to see this year. And it's not only, when the collective bargaining agreement gets done, but basically every superstar in the entire WNBA is a free agent. And so what is that going to look like next year? What is that going to look like for the New York Liberty? What is that going to look like for every team? When you look at Vegas, every single one of their stars is a free agent. Are they going to choose to stay there or might some leave? So, it's had a really big impact the last couple of years, and it's going to have an even bigger impact this coming season just because of how many different players will be in the mix and talking to teams across the league.
Speaking of a big star in Las Vegas, Asia Wilson has played such a huge role in the Aces, getting back to the top three of the last four seasons. What has she meant not only to the Aces squad, but also the WNBA in general?
It's I mean, she meant a massive amount to both of those entities, right? Like watching these playoffs. I mean, last year, the 2024 season, unanimous MVP. By far the best player in the league. And then this year, the whole Vegas team started off kind of slowly, and then they went on their 16 game winning streak. And during that streak, like, wow, Asia's kind of separating herself. As great as Nafisa Collier has been this year, as great as Alyssa Thomas has been this year, it felt like, okay, Asia's separating herself. And then as I'm watching these playoffs, I'm like, wow, she is without question the best player in the world right now. And her fans are passionate, and the Vegas Aces fans are passionate, and it's just been kind of a treat to be on the sideline and to watch her and to continue to improve. Because when she wins her first MVP 4 years ago, you're thinking, how much better can she get? Or I guess 5 years ago, like how much better can she get? And then the next year and the next, like she just keeps improving. And you wonder, is there even a ceiling on what Asia Wilson can do? She has been extraordinary. And it's really, and she's 29 years old. It's been a joy kind of to watch her each year get better and better. And her teammates love her. And she really pours into them and helps make them better. And that's what a great basketball player does.
I think when you talk about the fans that Asia Wilson draws and sort of the Aces, ESPN draw released that this year's WNBA Finals averaged 1.5 million viewers per game, and it was the second most watched WNBA Finals ever. And then across the other postseason games, it was an average of 1.2 million viewers. This is a huge jump from the past few years and before that. But how do you think the gaining of this viewership and a lot of fandom has benefited the WNBA players and their organizations as well?
Well, it's really going to benefit them this offseason when they figure out the new CBA. But how has it benefited them already? Well, a year ago in 2024, the league started flying the teams in the players' charter. That's not something that was collectively bargained, but because of the increase in attention and viewership and in-arena experience, the league made that investment in the players. So that was one way we've already seen it impact the players. The second way is a year ago was when the new TV deals were done. And there's a massive increase in revenues that the league is now getting because of those new TV deals. How will it impact the players directly is going to be determined by this new CBA. And, even Kathy Engelbert has talked about what she wants, and the league wants transformational change in terms of the salaries that the players are making. The players are trying to get more in terms of revenue share. All of those things will increase, I would imagine, dramatically because of what we've seen over the past couple of years. And indirectly, the players and the sponsorships that they have, the endorsements they have continued to grow. Like we've seen a lot more commercials with a variety of players over the course of the last 2 or 3 years than we had prior to that. Why? Well, because over 1 million people are watching these games. The arenas, the in-arena experience, there's a lot more sellouts, a lot more people coming to watch in person. And so that has also impacted what's happening off of the court in terms of the endorsement. So it's going to be interesting, though, to see when this new CBA gets done and how transformational it's actually going to be. But the players, the days of the rookies, making $75,000, those days are gone. The days of the max contract being $225,000 for the best, most veteran player, those days are going to be behind us. There's going to be a massive shift when it comes to those salaries.
Taking a shift actually to the CBA, you were a part of those you were a part of the negotiations when you were playing as a player representative. What was your role in the early WNBA CBA negotiations as representative? And what is it like trying to negotiate terms with a league office?
It was so different, Kurt, in those days. I was part of that first executive committee. I don't know if I was a vice president or secretary or what I was, but I was something. And in those days, because I was part of the first CBA, I think it was 98 or 99, somewhere in there. Our two biggest things is we wanted year-round health insurance because we had health insurance, but only for the duration of the season. So like 4 months from May to August or whatever it was. And the other one was we wanted a 401k. We had no retirement, no employer match. That was our focus in that first CBA negotiation. But it was still our group and our union reps, in terms of the attorneys and stuff, going to the NBA and WNBA league offices and meeting with the league's lawyers. At that time, David Stern was the commissioner of the NBA. And, I can distinctly remember one meeting where he came in and wasn't particularly happy with the way things were going, and was very boisterous in announcing that. It's been great for me with that sort of base of knowledge to see what the players now are trying to get, and to see how far the league has grown. And honestly, too, this is sort of the first time I'm watching the CBA negotiations from afar without the fear that the league's going to fold. Because to me, in every previous CBA negotiation, there was a real possibility that the NBA could just say, this is too much. We're losing money. We're not willing to invest. We'll just fold the league. That's not a reality anymore. That's not an economic reality. These franchises are worth too much. These women are worth too much. And so there is that sort of piece of relief in me that I've never had before, watching from the outside of, well, at least we know, even if there was a lockout, which I don't think there's going to be, even if there was, this league is not just going to go away.
A little bit more on the current CBA negotiations. What do you think would look like a win would look like for players in this negotiation?
I think both sides want the same thing. It's just a matter of the dollars involved. I think the league wants to pay the players a lot more. I just think their definition of a lot might be different from the players. I think the league wants to figure out a revenue share that works for them so that their investors can continue to make money, because this is a business and that's really important. But they also want to be fair to the players. I would think, to me, and this is something that I've talked about and listened to Ryan Ruocco talk about, is that you feel like the max salary has to be upwards of $1 million to kind of feel like pro sports and to feel like these women have arrived. The max salary has to be upwards of $1 million. And I think it'll get there. And it'll just be interesting kind of to see how it all breaks out. Like, will there be one supermax player allowed per team? Ryan's idea is there should be one player whose salary can be whatever, and it won't count against the salary cap. So there's a lot of different ways to go about it. But I think for the perception from the outside, for people who are just, whatever casual sports fans, if they hear their WNBA players making 7 figures, I think it just changes the way they sort of perceive these women in the league that they're playing in.
What precedent do you think this CBA negotiations will play for other women's sports leagues? I know we have women's hockey, women's soccer, but just how much that the WNBA means to all of the other ones as well.
I think it could be huge in that regard, because we're not only talking about the growth of women's basketball, but we're talking about the growth of women's sports. Women's soccer has grown tremendously. Hockey is on that trajectory. So I think it's important, but I also think we should not just compare women's sports to other women's sports. Like, we should compare the WNBA to other pro leagues that are averaging similar number of viewers. It's going to be different because whether it's hockey or baseball, they're going to have more games because their seasons are longer. But it is fair to compare viewership to viewership. And it's fair to compare in-arena experience in terms of number of tickets sold to in-arena experience. It shouldn't just be female sports to female sports. That being said, it is good to understand that women's sports have a larger area with which they can grow, and therefore there's a lot of opportunities when you look at that potential growth.
Before we let you go here, we just wanted to ask if you had any advice for us trying to get into the industry, especially women's basketball. I think we're both very big women's basketball fans, especially the Liberty. But just if you have any advice for us.
Well, one thing is, and you're already doing it, and I think it's the biggest thing, is to get reps get reps doing whatever it is that you want to do. So if it's covering games, get your press pass and get reps, whether it's writing about the game you just saw, talking about the game you just saw, interviewing people. All of that helps you be better. When I first started at ESPN, I was terrible because I had no reps. Like those first bunch of years, if I went back and watched the game, I would be cringing because I'm like, oh, how do you not know to have more energy? How do you not know how to articulate something with fewer words? Well, you don't know what you don't know. And so just continue to learn. And you guys are at a great school for that with a great program where you can have an opportunity to experience real life things while you're doing them, and ask questions and find mentors. I know Ryan goes back to Fordham a lot and is very willing to mentor people. If people ask me for advice, I'm always happy to give it. Holly Rowe, who's our sideline reporter, a number of times a year, we'll be at a shoot around the morning of a game, especially during the college season, and she'll have somebody tagging along with her, and she'll say, "Do you remember this person? She used to play for NC State. Well, she's shadowing me today." And ask, because people in this business are really willing to help and very encouraging, and just keep doing it and understand, like anything in life, there's going to be failures, and learn from those failures. Don't let them pierce your soul. Just be like, all right, this didn't go how I wanted it to. What have I learned from this? How can I be better next time? Have a thick skin, because you want people to tell you how you can be better. And oftentimes they do that by telling you what's not good about what you're doing now. Take all of that for what it's worth, and get better from it. And I think that's one of the things that great coaches in sports do, is they, help you get better. And if you can find a mentor who can kind of help you in that regard as well, it'll be huge. But just keep doing it. Just keep doing it. And Alex, I was checking out your Twitter account the other day. You're just pumping out your information during the WNBA playoffs in the finals. It was awesome. Keep doing it. And then as you continue to get those reps, you'll be able to continue to build the resume that you're going to want to have.
Well, Rebecca, thank you so much for joining us today. I know me and Alex are very excited to also hear you on the college game as it comes up this season. And for me, I've been Kurt Sippel, joined by Alex Diaz. Rebecca Lobo, thank you so much once again. And more one-on-one coming up after this.